So stay tuned for the end to find out what the most common personality trait that most psychologists in their field are going to have. What is up, fam? Welcome back to the channel. If it's your first time here, welcome. My name is Phil Sarpon. This is Phil's Guide to PsyD. This channel is dedicated to all things psychology, wellness, and graduate school. Some of the questions that I've been getting from you guys recently is what are some of the personality traits that you can see in most psychologists in the field? Now, I had to do some research on this, but I think I was able to find some really good evidence that shows certain qualities that most psychologists are going to have in the field. Now, one thing to be certain about this is, of course, there's going to be a wide range of different personalities and traits, but there does seem to be a pattern of personality and temperament in terms of becoming a psychologist. It doesn't mean that if you are a different temperament or a different personality that you can't become a psychologist. It just seems that psychology seems to be gravitating or attracting a number of different certain types of personalities that I think is really interesting to look into. So we're gonna dive right in. I'm gonna show you guys some of the research that's been done, and hopefully you guys can do your own research and see for yourself what could be true or what could not be true as well. Now, two things that we're going to talk about are going to be the big 5 personality traits, which if you haven't heard of before, most likely when you get into psychology school, you definitely will hear about the big 5 personality traits. The other thing we're going to talk about is the Holland codes, which is another thing that psychologists or even business coaches will use to help identify some different characteristics of how people think and what their work type history or what their work outlook looks for them specifically. So we'll start with the least common, which is when you look at the Holland codes, there's 6 different variations, and we'll go through each one individually. There's realistic, conventional, enterprising, artistic, social, and investigative. The one that shows the lowest percentage of psychologists having is realistic. Now, realistic is basically a type of person who is very body oriented. This means that they enjoy using their hands and their eyes to solve practical problems. This includes being in the outdoors. Maybe they're a car mechanic. Maybe they're really into physical activities. It's very natural for this person to be in the physical world. So that being said, if you think about psychology, there's not really a lot of things that a psychologist can do with their hands. There's not really a lot of things that they can do in terms of mechanical activities. Most of psychology is just communication. So it would make sense that the lowest percentage of psychologists are revolving around this type of personality trait. So that totally makes sense. But that is what a realistic personality trait is. If we go up the ladder, the next percentage of psychologists are going to be conventional. Now, a conventional person is someone who's careful, they tend to be quiet, they tend to pay really close attention to detail. They follow a set of rules that appeals to people. They also prefer to carry out tasks that are assigned by others rather than take on any type of leadership role. They are typically neat, tidy, and enjoy working with data in structured settings. So you can think of this type of personality trait as like someone like a data analyst or a data scientist. They're really good with computer skills, maybe some cyber evaluations, different things like that. They're not necessarily related to being people oriented, which is, I think, really a benefit and a strong prevalence with psychologists in terms of, even if they're introverted, they do like spending time with people. They like talking to people. They like listening to people. And so a conventional is way more on the tech side, I would say. And it would make sense that this would be a very low percentage of psychologists that revolve around this personality trait. The next one is enterprising, which I think is really cool. So basically you can think of enterprising as a person who would make an excellent leader. They are an excellent problem solver. They enjoy sales. They enjoy management roles. This type of person tends to be extroverted. And while they may seem restless or irresponsible, Their energy and ability to take risks is the reason that a lot of these projects get started and also stay successful. So you can think about these people as being very much entrepreneurial, very much maybe really into business, maybe into marketing, advertising. They're out there in the field. And I think this makes sense in terms of psychologists having this personality trait, because there is an aspect of psychology, especially if you're going into a leadership position in a medical center, or maybe in a school or an institution or a counseling mental health center. A lot of psychologists do have opportunities for leadership. A lot of psychologists will look over a number of different psychologists in terms of management and things like that, whether it's supervision or consulting. So it does make sense that a good percentage of psychologists fit this personality mold very well. All right, now if we look into the next one, the next highest percentage of psychologists that revolve around this personality trait are going to be artistic psychologists, or basically an artistic person is someone who likes to be involved with forms, patterns, and designs in life. They like to use their minds and hands to create things. They enjoy unusual people, sight, sounds, and textures. They also have a lot of spirit and enthusiasm. I think this makes sense in terms of the next percentage of psychologists that revolve around this personality that are going into psychology, just because in some ways therapy is not just a science, but can also be this artistic flow. And I think for psychologists, a lot of psychologists do enjoy spending time with unusual people, or do enjoy spending time with people who perhaps are different. In terms of psychology, there's a lot of clinicians and therapists that hear a number of different stories or build therapeutic relationships with people that may be castrated or on the outside or in the margins or whatever it is. And so there's an aspect of artistic ability that I think is really embedded in psychology. So that definitely makes sense as well. All right, so the next thing, we got the last two main personality traits. Social. So what a social person is in this category, a social person is someone who thrives in social situations. They like to work with other people. They generally love helping others. They are empathetic, caring, sensitive, and they're really good at understanding people's moods and feelings. Social people are good at generating positive energy for a good cause. Now, if that doesn't sound like a psychologist, I don't know what does. That makes a lot of sense in terms of that type of work trait really fitting the mold of what a psychologist does on a day-to-day basis, whether they see patients, they really get to know their patients, to understand their patients, to really connect with their patients. There's one thing that takes the cake that most psychologists are going to attribute themselves in terms of this work trait, and that is going to be the investigative. So, what an investigative person is that an investigative person is someone who lives in the mind. They try and solve problems. They prefer reading and studying books and texts rather than using their hands. They tend to analyze situations before making a decision. They are incredibly investigative people, independent thinkers, and they are both curious and insightful. I think in order to be a psychologist, and this even relates to neuropsychology, you have to be very investigative. You have to not only understand people and the social aspects of treating people or talking to people or listening to people, but you also have to be really good at solving problems. And a lot of times people are coming to psychologists and clinicians because they have a mental illness or because they have a mental health problem. And so to be able to help people with that problem or with that issue or whatever is going on is really, really valuable. And I think there's an investigative side of really looking and analyzing into that. And so I think what's wonderful about this is that basically the majority of psychology school is going to be reading, studying, writing, all of these different things that are involved in the investigative work trait flow. The open 5 or the big 5 top personality traits for psychologists are going to be things that are going to be related in general to your traits, to your personality. And again, there's certain types of traits in the big 5. There's certain types of traits that tend to have more psychologists than not. All right. And it's not to say that all of these other traits don't matter, but if you are one of these traits, that just means that there may be some evidence that psychology probably will be a really good career for you. But I will share with you the one that was the number one thing that most psychologists are, and that is on the openness scale. So the openness scale is basically someone who finds themselves searching for new ideas. They really enjoy talking about big, abstract ideas. They have a high openness to experience. And some common traits of someone who is high in the openness score is someone who has a high desire for variety, high curiosity, and an active imagination. If you guys are curious what you are or where you fall into, there are a number of tests online, the Big 5 personality traits test that you can take online. If you guys have any questions at all, please put it down in the comment section below. If you like this video, please like this video. And with that, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. With that, I will see you guys in the next video.